Assalamu alaikum students. Today we are discussing the topic Lahore Resolution of 1940. In the slide you can see I have also mentioned it's Lahore Resolution 1940 or Pakistan Resolution. It's interesting to note that the Pakistan Resolution was the name given by Congress leader Nehru, not any Muslim leader, because he was suspicious when this resolution was taking place and the annual session of the Muslim League was taking place in 1940. Nehru became suspicious. He felt that the Muslims are planning to have a separate state, as the name Pakistan has been coined by Chaudhry Rahmat Ali much earlier. So this was the anticipation in the mind of Nehru that this session has been held to discuss to have a separate Muslim state. That is why, in fear, he named it Pakistan Resolution, and later on this came to be known as Pakistan Resolution because Pakistan was founded based on this resolution. Now let's discuss why the transformation of the Muslim minority into a nation and how it had taken place. Now, what was discussed in the Lahore Resolution? As you can see, it's mentioned that no constitutional plan would be workable or acceptable to the Muslims unless geographical contiguous units are demarcated into regions which should be so constituted with such territorial readjustment as may be necessary. This was decided in the annual session of the Muslim League, that no constitutional plan would be workable unless this measure would be taken, that all the areas that are having Muslim majority should be demarcated into regions with such territorial readjustment as may be necessary for the Muslims. And who were the architects of the Lahore Resolution? You can see Muhammad Zafarullah Khan and Sher Bangla A.K. Fazlul Huq. These two people who were known as the architects of the Lahore Resolution. The resolution for the establishment of a separate homeland for the Muslims of British India passed in the annual session of the All India Muslim League held in Lahore on 22 to 24 March 1940. And on the 23rd March this resolution was moved, and this is the landmark document of Pakistan history. Now, why did the concept of nationalism emerge in 1940, not earlier? Why? So there is a reason behind. First of all, there is a question rise that the concept of nationalism had existed before, but why it became so obvious in 1940? There must be a reason. Okay, now these are the reasons given. Why in 1940 the concept of nationalism arose in practical form? First of all, Hindus had come to power in the form of Congress rule for the first time in 1937 to 39. You see, this event had taken place before 1940 resolution. Now, before this, the British had ruled over 100 years and both Hindus and Muslims were treated as subjects. You see, this is also one of the reason that the Muslims and Hindus both were treated as subjects. Hindus were not ruling over Muslims at that time. They both were ruled by the British, but this time the Hindus had come to power, means one of the subjects had come to the power over another subject. So it was for the first time one subject had got the chance to rule over the other in British India. This is the reason behind that the Muslims had retaliated in the form of having separate state, because the Muslims had realized this Congress rule is not tolerable at all, because the Congress had shown tyranny during their rule and the Muslims were being alienated. When did the concept of nationalism emerge? Now we have discussed why, and now we are coming to when. It was raised for the first time. You see, the concept of nationalism had emerged much earlier. So Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was the first person who had come forward with the two-nation theory, and he had realized that the time was not ripe for the Muslim to come to power, as British were at the peak of their power and Muslims were not ready for that because they were uneducated. That is why he struggled for the Muslim to get education. Then in 1933, Chaudhry Rahmat Ali had presented the idea, but even Jinnah did not like it. Therefore, the idea was not given a political platform. And you know that Chaudhry Rahmat Ali was the one who had come up with the name Pakistan. Much earlier than Chaudhry Rahmat Ali's stance, in 1930, Iqbal had already suggested that NWFP Sindh and Balochistan should be amalgamated into one state. So these are three ways when the concept of nationalism emerged much earlier than 1940. But for the first time, in 1940, it was given a voice. Now, what was Jinnah's stance? In the beginning, he was not in favor of a separate state. He wanted political autonomy for Muslims within a loose federation in India. The bitter experience of Congress rule, however, convinced him that as the British departure was not imminent, because it was not occurring at the moment, the only way to protect Muslims was the demand of a separate homeland. You see, Jinnah in the beginning was not in favor of a separate state, but later on, after the Congress rule, he had realized that there is a need of separate state. And this Congress rule had ended in 1939. And it's very much obvious that why Muslim had come up with the idea of a separate state in 1940. Now, how Pakistan Resolution was so called? It was named as Lahore Resolution, but as I told you earlier, it was Nehru who had referred it as Pakistan Resolution as the title Muslim, but this title was later on adopted by the Muslims. Now, what was the reaction of Hindus at this? Hindus became hostile to this idea. British showed no importance. They were busy in war in Europe. You know, that was that time the World War was going on. In 1939, World War II had started, and this continued till 1945. So they were very much busy in war. That is why they did not want to involve themselves in the affairs of in subcontinent. But for Muslim, it was an irresistible idea. It became the voice of Muslim in India. Now the question arises, why did British show no concern? It was a very important development that had taken place in the subcontinent, but the British showed no concern. Why? These were the conditions of the British remaining quiet. They wanted matters to remain calm in India so that they could focus on European affairs. They wanted Indian backing as well in war, as they were in a weak position in Europe. You know that Muslims in India were also participating in a British war, and the Hindus as well. So the British wanted their support. If the Hindus and Muslims withdraw their support to the British war, the British would be in trouble. That is why they did not want to have any trouble at all. Secondly, the demand of Pakistan was the demand of right and not of favor, because as Muslims we were a nation by any definition, so they had the right to ask for their own state. So this was also justified, and the British had realized that, and they were planning that something must be done for the rights of Muslim as well. That is why they did not show any concern. Now the events. What were the events? 22nd March 1940, annual session of All India Muslim League had taken place in Lahore. These are the events of the Lahore Resolution. Now, resolution was put forward by Fazlul Huq, the Premier of Bengal, on 23rd March, and then it was seconded by Chaudhry Khaliquzzaman. And Jinnah himself delivered the speech with passion. He said Muslims were a nation by any definition. Now, what is the significance of this resolution? First of all, it was meant to setting goals for the separate Muslim state. The approval of Pakistan resolution set a target for the Indian Muslims, which was the creation of Pakistan. Before that, the target was not set. Now, this was the agenda of the Muslim. Second, this paved way for the Muslim unity, because after setting on the goals, the interest of the unity of Muslim increased rapidly. Muslims started to unite at the platform of Muslim League. This helped in the unity of Muslims in India. Before that, the Muslims were divided, but this time they were now united for achieving this goal.